Hi, everybody, and welcome to Devotions today. It's Monday, and I hope you're going to have a great week. Yesterday was the Amashova, and I've done a few of those with very average times. And there's also another great race, that's the Comrades, that happened a little while ago. Now, there are three things about these long distance events. The one is there's a start, and number two, there's a finish, but there's also the bit in the middle where you've just got to fuss bet and you've just got to carry on. And there are all sorts of things that can come between the start and the finish, and some people just don't finish. Some people have an injury. Some people actually get ill, and they've just got to be taken off the course. With the bicycles, you can have a mechanical failure. You can have a crash, and that can really put an end to your race. And sometimes you just get so tired, you hit the wall, and there are all sorts of things that stop you from reaching the end. Well, in the Bible, the Christian life is often compared to a race, to an athletics event, because in the Bible, when it speaks about becoming a Christian, there are also these three things. You have the start, and that is for there to be a real conversion of your life. When you decide to accept Christ as your Lord and Savior, and you welcome him in as your Lord, as your friend, as the one who walks the path of your life with you. And then there is the continuing. And Paul wrote this to Timothy in his second letter, chapter 3, verse 14. He says, as for you, continue in those things which you have been taught and have firmly believed. And then, of course, there's the finish, when everything reaches its glorious conclusion. And I would like to focus today on continuing, because this is where we struggle. I know I do, just to carry on, because there are definitely things that get in the way. For example, there is trauma, and this is one of the most painful things, where you have a tragic death, or where there is a terrible accident, or there's a painful illness that just goes on for years and years. Sometimes there are things that distract us. We get involved in work, or we get involved in our ambitions, or life itself becomes so difficult for one reason or another. Broken relationships can break our hearts and break our spirits as well. And sometimes the critical arguments of people against the Christian faith can also put us off. And sometimes there are those who just don't want to carry on anymore and who give up on their Christian faith. But we are called to continue. Jesus said, he who endures, or she who endures to the end, will be saved, will reach the completion of the whole process. And I would like to just look at one verse in Hebrews at the beginning of chapter 12. Sorry, it's actually a couple of verses. And let me read it to you. It says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. Let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. And let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and the perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning the shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Well, there are a number of things mentioned there about continuing. And I'd just like to point out briefly what they say. And maybe you'd like to go back to these verses yourself and just read them over again. The first is to remember we're surrounded by a cloud of witnesses, that there are many people who've walked this road before. We are not unique in the terms of the things that we face. And they have come through, and they have believed right to the end. They have continued. Remember their example. Then it says, throw off everything that gets in the way. To look into our lives and to see where there are those things that cling to us and prevent us from actually staying close to Christ. And then the third thing it says, let us run with perseverance the race marked for us. There is just a part of our Christian life, which means we believe, even though everything seems to be contradicting it at the time, we just believe, raw faith, and we know that God will bring us through. And then let us fix our eyes on Jesus. Keep our focus on him. And when there are problems and when there are difficulties, don't allow them to take you away from Jesus, but speak to him about them. Draw near to him with them. Don't let them drive you away from him. And remember, he says, that he endured the cross for you, the price that he paid, the love that he showed. And then finally he says, and finally he sat down at the right hand of God. There is a glorious blessing awaiting as we continue the journey right to the end. And so I would say, continue in those things which you have believed, and don't be turned aside. May God help all of us to do just that. God bless you as you go ahead now.